some of them, like here, have been bitten off. You can see all of this got bitten off. And if you look over there, you can see there's some fresh rabbit poop on the ground on top of the snow. I haven't walked over there today. Okay, so the rabbits were here last night. Hey, so it's 48 hours, around almost 48 hours, like 45 hours since the last video. I didn't go out the day after. We had a big snowstorm, and now we got snow. And from the looks of the forecast, the snow is going to stick around for. It's going to rain tomorrow. It's going to get up to 0, and there's supposed to be rain, snow. So who knows what that's going to look like? But from the looks of it, it's going to get really cold, -19 overnight, stuff like that, -19 Celsius. So looks like the snow is going to stick around, and we can finally see tracks. Now I'm about 1 kilometer in so far today, give or take, almost 1 kilometer. And the only tracks I've seen, rabbit tracks, were in my backyard, right behind my house. All of the woods, sort of woods proper, the place where I can hunt woods, far enough from the house, I haven't seen anything. So the bridge is right down there. I'm gonna go a little bit further, and just gonna go to all the places where I've been setting snares and see what's going on. So come on. All right, so here's the spot where I got one of my rabbits this year. You can see I got here's the, you watch the video where I put the snares away before the snowstorm. Actually, that probably wasn't necessary, but I didn't know how much snow we were going to get. It looked like it was going to be a bad one. It was something like, you know, up to 45 centimeters of snow. So anyway, I'm just going to leave them here for now. I'm not going to bother resetting these. I mean, so it's only been basically a morning. The bad weather stopped sometime last night. But you know, if you've got a good rabbit pot, it would have been out this morning, I think. Still, it hasn't been that much time, so I'm not going to bother resetting it today. I'm just going to let things go, because this is the only snare. This set here is sort of a detour from my main trail. But if this entire loop is showing nothing, I'm going to check it today, I'm going to check it tomorrow. This entire loop, I mean, there's no tracks here at all, and I haven't seen one rabbit track. I've already checked 2 snares. I've gone about half a kilometer so far on my actual rabbit snaring line. Haven't seen one rabbit track, just a couple squirrel tracks and things like that. Nothing yet. You'd think there'd be something moving this morning. So it just seems like the rabbit population here has just crashed. But let me check the other ones. It's a bit early to conclude yet. All right, so here I am at the spot where a rabbit had slipped a snare, pushed it out of the way a while ago, what I thought was a rabbit. And there's some tracks here, but they're not very distinct. They've been snowed in a little bit. I think these are porcupine tracks. I think, and porcupines use rabbit trails sometimes. There's no sign of rabbit here at all. These little birch boughs that I put down have not been touched by anything. They're just too long. I mean, I can't see them that well, but they look like feet with balls. They're too long to be wildcat. Wildcat is more like a bobcat, more round. Like, again, they've been snowed in and they're not sort of pristine, but they're not round enough to be bobcat. They're more long. To me, these look like porcupine, and porcupine sort of they drag their heels. They sort of have a clumsy, shuffly walk. They don't walk clean. Coyotes and bobcats sort of put their feet in the ground and take them out. They don't sort of swish and drag them along like a porcupine. You know, porcupine sort of half, you know, it's built for walking, but it's also built for climbing, and it's carrying all that armor. So they sort of have a clumsy, shuffly, sort of heavy walk. Also, I can't see a coyote, certainly not coyote tracks, or the mythical eastern cougar, because there's no way a cougar would have ducked down to go through that little hole, which this thing did. So my best guess is, and they're too big to be anything else, like you know, pine marten or whatever. So my guess is that these are porcupine, and that's what pushed my snare out of the way. No point in, I don't think you're allowed to snare porcupines, but even if you do, they're much stronger and more powerful than a rabbit. You'd have to have a spring snare of some kind, if you were so inclined, and if it was legal, which I don't think it is. Anyway, the porcupine went this way, so let's follow the old porcupine, see what it did. I'm guessing it's a porcupine. Anyway, these aren't fresh. These tracks, they've been snowed in. So this would have happened, oh, very early in the morning or very late at night. And the weird thing is there's just no sign of, no rabbit tracks at all. I mean, I'm telling you, this is a rabbit heavy place. The porcupine went off this way, as far as I could tell. Also, the feet are close together. The steps much closer together than would be a bobcat. And it's going through all these little holes and stuff. So I'm gonna guess it's a porcupine, but normally there'd be rabbit tracks up and around here. Like, there's just nothing. I can't fathom it. It's just amazing. Like, there's no sign at all here. Nothing down here. Usually you can see the tracks in amongst there as well, right? Just nothing. Totally strange. I mean, sure, it's only been, you know, whatever, 12 hours or whatever since the snow stopped. But I mean, they were hunkered down for an entire day during a wicked storm. They wouldn't have gone anywhere. It was an incredible storm, windy. There was even though it was snowing, there was lightning. It was like a snow thunderstorm, right? Totally crazy storm. Rabbits would have been going nowhere. They got a pretty high metabolism, so as soon as that all broke, they'd be hungry as hell and they'd be out looking for something to eat. So this is just more sign. I mean, I'm going through very familiar territory here. I've been snaring rabbits for years. Just nothing. There's normally tracks in here. Now I see porcupine. This is a known porcupine trail. This here spot. I used to get tricked into thinking this was a rabbit trail. This is a porcupine trail, and there's porcupine tracks in it. It's been a porcupine trail for years. It must be a den or something. They go over this way. Well, you can see they almost look like they're snowshoeing, right? They drag their feet along. Clumsy, lazy walker. Right? They don't walk clean, they walk messy, sort of thing. Almost like they're snowshoeing. Anyway, so no rabbit yet, just porcupine. And I'm not interested in porcupine at all. I've eaten them a couple times. They're really not much to write home about. I remember watching one of these reality shows, and one of these guys was talking about porcupine being good eating. They're really not. I mean, it'd be good eating if you were starving to death. The liver in the porcupine is not bad. That's relatively tender and relatively big. If I were to take a porcupine, I'd go for the liver first, and the meat, I'd let that simmer for a day. They're very tough. All right, looks like the porcupine went the same way as me. I went in there. Just going through this sort of tunnel type setup here. I'm getting covered in snow. Maybe I shouldn't have worn a wool jacket today. It's just getting covered in snow. And it's a bit too warm for wool. Just melts on the jacket. I mean, it looks like the porcupine's using my trail. It's basically going the same way I want to go, following my trail. Now right up here somewhere is where I've got, well, normally would have other snares. Of course, I pulled everything, and I'm not resetting until I see sign of rabbit. And if there isn't any, I'm just going to have to move somewhere else for this season. Now check this out. So here's another spot where I had a snare set through this hole, where I thought, and I saw rabbit droppings, right? And I set up some birch tips, and there's tracks, but these are porcupine tracks. No rabbit would have passed by this birch tip, would have passed it up, would have had a bite. Porcupine using this trail. This is just amazing. Just amazing. This is where I had the rabbit snare over here. No sign of anything, no tracks, no nothing. Porcupine went down this way. You can see the tracks. Here's where I had some maple tips that got browsed on heavily by a rabbit, I guess. Probably it could be a deer, but I'm pretty sure it was a rabbit because I had a rabbit in my snare over there. No rabbit tracks. I always see tracks in this spot here. This is just incredible. Just incredible. All right, so I finished the entire loop, all 3 kilometers of it, and I haven't seen one rabbit track. Nothing. No sign. Just porcupine tracks. No wildcat or bobcat. No coyote. A handful of squirrel tracks. sure, it's been less than 12 hours since the weather calmed down. Maybe more than that. I mean, basically when I woke up this morning, everything had calmed down. There was a layer of snow on the ground from last night. But yeah, it was a rough night. They were not feeding last night, I guarantee you that. So you got, you know, if they were around, they would have been feeding today. They would have been doing, there'd be something, there'd be some sign on this whole loop. This is just amazing. So my snares are still out there, sort of hung up on the trees, not reset. And I'm gonna go check tomorrow. If I don't see sign in a couple days, I'm gonna pack it in and just give up on that section and find somewhere else to snare, somewhere where there's rabbits actively doing their thing. This is another section of the forest here. This is actually the area where, if you watch that video, I built the paddle. That's the tree I cut down to build. I made two canoe paddles, one with an axe and a knife, and one with a folding saw and a knife out of that tree, spruce tree, I think, or fir perhaps. Anyway, I filmed another video here a little while ago where I was testing out a foldable pot, which did not work. And I noticed in this area a pile of rabbit poop, like maybe 12 pellets in one little area, right around here somewhere. So there's no birch trees around here, but rabbits also like the maple tips, really like them. If you can't find birch tips, use maple tips. So I just took some of these tips and threw them in a pile here to see if there's anything going on here. Okay, this is a little bit out of the way, but I mean, if there's rabbits here, I'll basically change my snare trail to this section of the forest. I'm curious to see if it's the whole system or just sort of a relatively localized area. Really don't know. Anyway, that's it for this video. I think that's been like 3 or 4 videos of me checking my snares and not finding anything. So not the most dramatic series of videos, but still, you know, part of that process. I have to say, I've never experienced a year where I've put this much energy into something and not gotten anything back at all. This is literally the worst snaring season I've ever had thus far in this location, well, anywhere ever. So it's really, I mean, it's frustrating, but it's also interesting to me anyway. Hey, I'm out in the woods and I just saw some interesting tracks. I do not think these are coyote tracks. I could be wrong, but I don't see any, you know, they seem to be very round, and I don't see the front claws, right? They seem to be following some rabbit tracks that are here. There's a sign of rabbit around here. But boy, I mean, these could be bobcat, but if it's a bobcat, it's a big bobcat. I mean, look at that. That's a regular size Bic lighter, right? That's a big bobcat if it's a bobcat. And some of the tracks look even bigger. Look at this one over here. Okay, look how much it pushed the snow down. It's got some weight. And here's a spot where see, here's a rabbit track. Okay, it's a very small rabbit, but that's a rabbit track. Good to see, because I haven't seen any out here in weeks. A very small rabbit. And then you got what I think is a bobcat tracking it, right? It's kind of following the tracks, sniffing around, walking, you know. I don't know where the rabbit is. These tracks aren't perfectly fresh, but they weren't here yesterday. I know, because I was out here yesterday, right? So it's probably not far. If I were to follow them, just keep going, I might figure out where the rabbit went. But anyway, just thought I'd share those. But I don't think it's a cougar. I think it's because, you know, they're just, I can't fathom the idea of that. But it's definitely bobcat, I would say. Just a big bobcat. Some of the tracks are really big. All right, so it's the next day, and I've come out to that spot where I laid down all the maple tips. And the other interesting thing is I saw fresh tracks in the property around my house, but I also saw some fresh rabbit tracks and what I think are wild bobcat tracks on the way to this location. I'm about 1 kilometer back in the woods now. Anyway, that pile of spruce that I laid out has been grazed on. Okay, Some of them, like here, have been bitten off. You can see all of this got bitten off. And if you look over there, you can see there's some fresh rabbit poop on the ground on top of the snow. I haven't walked over there today. Okay, so the rabbits were here last night. Okay, I know that because I was here less than 24 hours ago and there was no tracks at all. Okay, so what I've done here is just a little bit today because I don't have a lot of time, but basically I'm making this like a little fenced in area. People call them birch gates is a name for them, or rabbit pens or whatever. And some people have very elaborate ones they make with chicken wire. They'll literally make like a circle or a square of chicken wire and put birch tips in the middle. But another way to do it is to just sort of haphazardly like this, where you find a little opening in a space that's sort of hemmed in a little bit, right? And you see which way they come in. So there's some rabbit tracks over there where they come in. There's a little bit over there where they come in. But from what I could tell, the main way they came in was over this log, and not under the log, but basically they came down from there. And yes, I stepped all over the tracks. I think they'll come back anyway for the food, and I've left. So I added some new tips, left some food lying around here, right? That'll help them overcome their inhibitions, right? So they came down this way and they went over the log here. Okay, so what I did is I threw some stuff on top, and I basically make a nice good hole here for them to go through, where they'll feel comfortable going through that. The hole, I basically dug it out and pushed it down a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit more snow, and what I'll do, and I'll show you this all when I'm done, but I'll put some rabbit poop like it's going through there. That'll signal to the rabbits go this way, it's safe. Okay, dirty trick, I know. All right, so when you go in the so this here was wide open, and I just added a few saplings, just drove them into the ground to sort of hem that off. There's a path here. The main traffic was coming out through here, was coming over that log, and was coming from over there. You can see a lot of tracks, right, going both ways through there. Okay, so that's where you set your snares. I'm going to set 3 snares here. It's not airtight. There's ways in and there's ways out, but that's okay. Okay, you don't necessarily want to put a snare on every way in and every way out. I mean, you can, but chances are they don't always go in the way they don't always go out the way they came in, and they feel safer if they got options, right? More than one way out. And you can just hope if they're messing around here feeding and having a good time, they'll take one of the wrong ways and have the worst night of their life. Okay, so let me set some of this up, and then I'll show you when I'm done. If I had a camera, a cameraman here, they could film everything happening as it happens, but you'll just have to see the finished product and get a sense of it from there. All right, so now I've actually blocked that little exit. There's a little place they came in through there. I blocked that off a little bit. So basically there's only one, I mean, there's lots of ways in here, but of the ways they came in before, one is still open, one's partially blocked, and the rest are blocked off and snared. So I got one, this is the way it looked like they left. I got a nice snare set up here. Over there is a place where there's a lot of traffic with them coming in, so I got a snare there. And underneath the log, where that hole I made, I got a snare there. I still haven't put snow on there. I'll show you the trick for that in a second here. Don't know how well this will hold up, but let's just, for interest's sake. Okay, so you take that and you cut it. Still lost half the snow, but you get the idea. Looks a little bit more natural now, right? Now you just find some rabbit pellets and poop, and just make a little line going in. All right, so let's put that there. I'm only doing this because they didn't go under before, and I'm hoping that, because this is just such a good, it's such a good natural trap, right? Now some of you are going to say, oh, you touched it with your hand, your scent's on there, which is true. But I'm going to guess, since it's poop, that it's going to smell so much like poop that's going to mask the smell of my skin touching it for a few seconds, right? It's going to, whatever scent I added to that. I don't know how well rabbits can smell, but in my experience, putting a little poop trail on a rabbit path has never deterred them from taking it to get somewhere they want to go, ever. I've never seen the signs of their tracks walking up, smelling the poop that I put down with my fingers and them turning around, but you can see tracks in the snow. I think it just puts them at ease. It basically said, rabbits are here before, this is fine. Anyway, it's a trick I use. I don't know how effective it is. Like, I'd have to do an experiment to prove it, but it only takes a second to throw a little bit of poop on a path. So why not, right? There's a logic to it that makes sense to me, right? Wherever the rabbits go, they leave their poop behind. So if you leave some poop on a trail you want them to start using, it may indicate, they're basically going to smell a sign of other rabbits having been there. They're going to think it was a good place. There's a strong smell of maple. Even when you peel a maple, you can smell it, right? So hopefully they'll come back to this tonight. There was only about half the tips were eaten last night, and I added some more, so they'll be back tonight. And hopefully one of the 3 snares that I set up will be have something in it. When you use a setup like this, these pens or gates or whatever you want to call it, you have to check them every day, ideally twice a day, because if a predator, right, I mean, we got main predators here are wildcats, coyotes, but also owls, right? If they see the rabbit from over top, there's not a lot of cover here, right? So owls will come and take your stuff as well. So you have to check pens often, because you put time and energy establishing a location that draws rabbits in, and if you're just making basically a kill zone that feeds predators, you're really not getting the effect you wanted. So at least check them once a day, ideally every morning and every night if you can, but that's not possible for most people that have regular jobs and that sort of thing. Certainly not for me, not functional. I'll basically be checking them just before sundown every day. And also when you have a pen like this and you're checking them at sundown, it makes sense to bring 22 or 20 gauge or basically a rabbit gun, because they might be there at sunset when you're checking it, or around in the area. So it makes sense, right, to bring something. You're basically drawing them in. You've got a bait pile. There's going to be stuff around. So, all right, so now it's been about 36 hours since we had the snow. And I'm on this tried and tested, reliable rabbit trail. And there's no tracks here at all. And I've noticed rabbit sign throughout the forest today. Yesterday there wasn't anything. That was about 12 hours after the snow came down. We actually had some snow so I could see tracks. There was no tracks yesterday, but today there's tracks everywhere, but not on this tried and tested reliable path. So I'm going to take this snare here. That's the great thing about using this system. Take it with me to where I've been seeing tracks. Now I don't understand what's going on, why they've abandoned this trail. It's been so reliable for so long. But let me check the other spots along this trail where there's normally activity. I'm in this nice little spot here where I normally have a nice snare set here. No tracks, no nothing. So I'm taking the snare out of here, resetting it somewhere where there's action. There's just I don't know what's going on, but basically for 2022, a lot of my reliable spots are just being unreliable. So there's just no point in investing any more time, energy, patience in them. Here's another spot. Normally there's tracks going through here. The rabbits come from over there. They come across here and they go right through here, right where I've got that little beautiful point set up. Nothing here today, no tracks, no nothing, and there's tracks elsewhere in the forest. The rabbits were active last night and this morning. They weren't active here at all, so I don't think it's worth. I mean, you can see in there's like a system of tunnels, right? They love it in there. So I don't know what's going on, but anyway, there's just no point in investing more time. So I can take my snare and move it to greener pastures, right? All right, let's do that. All right, so I've pulled 4 snares from where I had them set before because they were close. I haven't got a lot of time to work with today. All the snares I've been setting were over there. There's a creek that runs perpendicular to the way I'm facing here. Basically runs that's east, right? So it runs from north to south. And it's possible that that's just a separate ecosystem. I don't know. Anyway, I'm seeing a lot of rabbit tracks on this side of the creek, and so this is where I'm setting snares. Now this here spot is sort of like a natural, what they call pen set. It's basically like a circle carved out of the woods, and there's a rabbit trail. See the rabbit tracks right there. Okay, they basically went right through. They came along that way and went through. Okay, so I've set one snare at the exit. Let's change the angle on that, still a little bit tippy. That's better angle. Okay, so I got one snare at the exit. I left that side open just because I don't have a lot of time, and I've only got 4 snares. And there's another one set over here. I didn't see any tracks going there, but it just looks like an exit. It goes into all this thick brush and all this sort of tipped over birch tree. There has to be rabbit trails in there, and it just looks like a way out. So I've set another snare right there. I got 2 more snares to set. I'm going to find a spot to do that. Another situation just like this, and I got just the spot in mind. All right, so here we got a set of rabbit tracks there, going into this area here. Now, as you can see, this area has sort of been bordered, right? This is a pen set I made years ago. Every year I just pull a couple rabbits out of it. I don't start the season with this. I retreat to it. This isn't far from my house. It's easy to get to. It's easy to check every evening, or at least every morning and night. This is like just a 20-minute walk sort of thing, right? So I'm going to cut some spruce tips. You can see they were in here just hopping around. There's tracks right there. Okay, they went to this exit, never went through it. Okay, so I'm not going to bother setting a snare there. There's an exit here. I see tracks going through that little exit. There's an exit here, and it's hard to see on camera, but I see tracks there. There's a second exit there. I used to put a snare on both of these, but I found that that's a bad idea. Basically, if a rabbit gets caught in one, it usually messes up the other one, so it's just pointless to have 2. That's just one of those trial and error things you learn. Anyway, I'm going to set a couple more. I'll show you when I'm done. All right, so I only got 2 snares set in this pen because that's all I had to work with. I elected to, instead of snaring the way the rabbit came in, I decided to leave the door open and snare off the 2 ways I see rabbits coming and going. Basically, I only see tracks coming in this way. This here, I saw a rabbit coming, going out and coming in this one. Same with over here. I've also snared rabbits in this very hole before. This spot, I didn't see any tracks there. I have snared rabbits over there. It's like just a perfect little doorway. But also, I think last year I had a rabbit just torn to pieces here by a coyote or something like that. So I tend to not set snares there because it just seems to be maybe a little too handy to a predator run. I don't know. It seems like, and it's happened more than once. Every time I set a snare over there, it gets hit by something. Perhaps it's easier to see. This is very, so we got a lot of cover here. No owls are going to see it. Nothing's going to see it from above. So it's a sort of good inconspicuous spot. And of course, I went and got a bunch of browse. Just got some maple and some birch. I couldn't find a lot of birch tips here, so I went with maple. Peeled some of it, as you can see there, but also just taking it and cracking it, putting a bend in it, right? Just to get the smells out, right? You crack open a piece of birch or a piece of maple, you can smell the smell. So it's like a dinner bell, right? If I can smell it, this rabbit can certainly smell it, and hopefully it just gets them interested and keeps them around, and they do something stupid like go out one of these holes that I've snared. So we'll check them tomorrow and see what happens. I'm definitely optimistic because there's tracks here, which means something might happen, right? You gotta have tracks to get rabbits. All right, see you in the next one. All right, so it's the next day, and we're at the first pen set, and I don't see. So that snare, the snare right over there, and it is unaffected. Nothing's gone through it. The snare that goes like under the doorway is just the way I left it, intact. I don't know if you can see that on camera. I set 3 snares and I left one doorway open. One way out, one obvious way out. So this spot here, where I closed up, this snare has been sprung. So there was a rabbit in here. All right, so my options now, of course I'm going to reset this one here, and I'll know by how easily it resets whether it was really in it or half in it or whatever. I'm surprised because the hole was nice and small. Maybe I put a paw in and took the paw out and that was enough to just close it up. There's no way it got itself body into that. Just the hole was just too small. And that's why you have a small hole. You know, you might, if you're new to this sort of thing, you might think having a bigger circle makes sense, but you're way more likely to get a body snare with that. And that's, I mean, the thing is just, it's going to suffer. You're more likely to lose it. It's more likely to break free or just make a lot of noise from distress and get taken out by something else. And when something else takes it out, then that something else knows that your pen set is a good place to go. So this pen set here probably took me the better part of half an hour of frigging around to get set up, even though it was already made, right? It was already kind of an open circle closed in with trees, but I had to add some more stuff to it, and I had to go around and gather sticks and fence it in a bit more and think about it and, you know, hum and haw and all that sort of stuff, right? Anyway, I'm going to reset this snare and close off. There's a pathway out over there. I'm going to close that off with some stuff. All right, there we go. I've closed it off somewhat, and here, I'll put the food right up against that. Maybe that'll be more likely to keep them from, I don't know how he came in. He's gonna come in a different way next time. So now he's got, I had all the boughs sort of in front of this side door. There's a pathway out over here. So now I've got this all blocked off. A nice way out over here, a nice way out that way, and a nice way out that way. If they're back tonight feeding, maybe this is the night. Definitely something happening here. There's been feeding on the tips, and yeah, I mean, look, definitely feeding on the tips. Fresh feeding on the tips. All right, that's what it looks like. All good sign. Let's check the other one. All right, here I am at the other pen set, which I had from last year, and that's always been reliable. But where I had rabbit tracks coming in through this doorway, which I didn't snare off. Anyway, I put down a bunch of boughs the last time I was here, and I don't see any sign of feeding. I mean, a couple of things like this, that's where I broke it. I broke the branches to make them, you know, emit a smell. But the tips, there's no sign of feeding on the tips anywhere. So, I mean, my best guess is that they just weren't here last night. You know, possibly because the rabbits just aren't thick in the forest right now. Who the heck knows, right? Anyway, these snares are completely unaffected. Nothing has touched them. And these are fine. How I usually establish these spots, number one, if I see good rabbit tracks somewhere, I'll just put down a pile of spruce or birch boughs, yellow birch ideally, or maple boughs. Also, if I see ideally if I see tracks in a spot where it's sort of like opened up a little bit, so there's less work to do, right? But there's also places you can set underneath a really big pine tree, right, is a really good sort of spot because it's not visible from above with the owls and that sort of stuff. I might do a bit of scouting around like that tonight, but I've only got, I mean, the sun's already gone below the horizon and I've got about 20 minutes to get home before it gets dark. I can get a lot of time, got enough time just to get out here. I fixed the other pen, have a look at this one. I might do a little scouting around. I haven't got a lot of time to play with. But at least I'm able to get out on a weekday. I mean, I know I'm fortunate to have this sort of job where I can do that. I'm really glad that I'm in that situation and that I can make these videos for you. But anyway, this is day 2 of the pen sets. I only got 2 pen sets, but we'll make some more. I'll basically just build on these on this side of the creek, a different part of the forest. It's, you know, sectioned off from the place where I had the snare set before by a natural barrier, a sort of slow-moving creek. Not a perfect barrier for rabbits because it does freeze over in places in the winter, but anyway, let's just say to some extent this is a different population to some extent. Okay, I might add another snare to this system here, right? I don't like closing off all the, I like to leave one entrance open, to tell you the truth. I like them to come in and feel good. But that's just me. Maybe that's a superstition, who knows. Also, having like 5 snares on one pen set seems a bit excessive. That's what I would need here to close everything off. I've set a snare in the 2 places I saw the rabbit go out. I saw rabbit tracks going in here, and I saw them going out this way. He must have come back in and went out that way, right? But I basically put the snares where I saw the traffic in the snow. When we had snow, as you can see, the snow's gone. Didn't take long. My daughter made a snowman, and it disappeared overnight on the front. It went from a snowman to a snowball in one night, and it disappeared overnight because we have the coastal weather here. Sometimes it gets warm at night, and that's what happened. Anyway, that's it for today's excursion, unless I see something else to film. All right, so it's the next day, and I came to check this first pen set, and I was a bit disappointed to see that it didn't look like there was any evidence of feeding at all. And then when I got around the corner, I noticed this guy here. It's actually got another one. So looks like my best guess is that he never found his way, or she, whatever, found its way into the pen. Basically came this way, not from the other, because there's only 2 other entrances. There's one entrance that way, and the snare is undisturbed. The other entrance is that little sort of doorway thing, and that's undisturbed. Now, I could be wrong. He could have come in some other way. Who really knows, right? But my best guess is that it came from this direction up here, went through the doorway, and doesn't look like much of a sign of a struggle either. Like the cross, when they really struggle, the crossbars, they get tangled up around. It looks like this guy just got sort of put out pretty quick. So anyway, that's one set where I got one. I mean, I've only got about 7 snares out right now, but that speaks to the value of investing the time and energy into a pen set, right? I mean, I normally, when I start off the season, I like to get a good hike in, and I like to have a big route. I mean, it usually works. I mean, this year's just totally weird. But if that's not working, then you do a pen set. It takes more time and energy to set them up, but they tend to draw the rabbits in, and they tend to work, right? And the other thing is you can have them, you don't have to have as huge a, snaring line. You can have a relatively small area with just a couple of these, maybe one of these every couple 100 yards. And it's nothing to check them. You might have maybe 2 to 3 snares per, but the reliability of them bringing the rabbits in, because you're basically putting out one of their favorite foods. In this case, mostly maple tips, some birch. So get this guy disconnected, set a new snare up, and check the next one before my hands freeze. Here I am at the other pen set, the sort of old reliable one, and it looks like the rabbits have been here. Some feeding. You can see this little sign of grazing here, right? Some of these tips have been over here. You know, so some of them, this one here, right? Some have been bitten down. One over here, right? Over here, right? So there was some feeding. This tip over here, right? Some feeding. I don't see much rabbit poop. Maybe they got spooked and took off. Maybe they went out. I mean, I've only got I only had 2 snares here, and 2 of the entrances are closed off, as opposed to maybe 3 or 4. So I'll snare off a couple more tonight before I leave today, and maybe that'll do the trick. And I'll get some fresh birch boughs I got on the way in. You walk by a birch tree with low-hanging boughs, grab a couple. And you notice here, instead of peeling these, just another lazy man's way to do it. You just break them, just snap them, right? Just snap them in lots of places, just to get some smell out, right? Every time I come out, add 1 or 2 fresh boughs, break them in lots of places, and hopefully that brings things around. Crazy. So it has been 24 hours since the last check. I've checked the pen where I got the rabbit yesterday. Nothing happened in there. I actually removed one of the snares at one of the entrances. This is the other good sized pen I got a 3rd pen to check now. I'll show you that. This is the other pen. I added a snare on that door there. See over here, right? Sort of the on the way out door. Okay, this exit is snared. Nothing happened in there. The sticks I got in here have some sign of feeding, as you can see here, right? If you examine them closely, there's not a lot. There isn't like piles of rabbit poop everywhere. So there was a rabbit in here doing a little grazing, but not heavy grazing. I've still got that entrance open. Okay. But whatever was in here got in this snare, and it just broke right off. And that's a brand new snare. Actually, it just broke again. So you can see it was worked really hard. Basically worked back and forth and brittle. But there's no sign of struggle here at all. Nothing. Right? This is just immaculate here. There's no fur, there's no nothing. There's no poop. You know, if a rabbit gets in a snare and fights and fights and fights and fights and fights and breaks itself loose, it's never around that rabbit's neck unless it has a paw in between the snare and the neck, which is very rare, but it happens. It's usually if the rabbit can fight its way loose because its body snared, and I make my snares too small for that. And if if a rabbit's body snared and it fights its way loose by just hopping around and pulling, and there is fur, there is sign of struggle. There is no sign here at all. You know, there's a little tiny hair there. Nothing. So my guess is that this rabbit got in and died very quickly, and then a coyote or something came along and took it out. I don't know how it got in here. There's certainly, nothing to keep something like that out. Bobcat or a coyote broke it loose. So, darn it, unbelievable. That's another rabbit I lost to them this year. One solution to that is to make the snare a spring snare, so it goes up and it's sort of out of the way. It takes a lot of, I don't have time to set when I was up tonight. That is a good, probably a good video to do. And there's a way to do it in the winter. A lot of the spring snares you see on survival channels, YouTube channels, and so on, are there for conditions when things aren't getting wet and frozen. Most of the spring snare setups in winter, they'll just freeze in place and they will not function. So you have to do it a certain way, using a tip up if you're using natural materials. I mean, sure, you can use a bungee cord. There's all kinds of things you can do if you want to get, bring stuff in. But if you're just using it with the materials around, you're sort of using a cantilever type deal. But the way you rig the mechanism is robust to the extent that even when it's frozen, if the animal struggles at all, it'll tip up and come loose. But anyway, it's another video, another topic. I got to reset this snare, although I don't even know if it's... I'm reluctant to reset it because there's something in here. Something, basically some predator knows that this is a good spot to take my stuff. Of course, I don't have any more claim to, you know, what's kicking around here than any other thing. It wouldn't have been an owl because it's underneath this tree here, right? Owl wouldn't have seen that. And again, I've seen it before. When an owl takes a snared rabbit, it usually just sort of pecks the head off. It's pretty gross. Owl makes a hell of a mess, as do crows, birds in general. It's the coyote. It just picks it up, yanks, and breaks the thing off. It's nothing. And the coyote's crazy strong. Strongest thing around, really, other than a black bear. Even much stronger than the bobcat. So, anyway, suffice it to say, I think that was stolen by a coyote. Really not sure if I want to reset the snare there or not. If it's worth it. I don't think I will tonight. I'll just leave it. And I get the day off tomorrow, so maybe I'll come out and rig a snare up. That seems to be like always tracks going through there. That's the sweet spot. But of course, there's one less rabbit coming here. Whatever rabbit that was coming to my bait pile, it's now not coming to my bait pile. So I guess by process of reasoning, it makes sense to leave it open. Let another one, you know, basically they come down the hill through the hole and they go up that way. That's basically what the tracks show. When there is tracks, when there is snow, you can see most of the snow is gone. So I want another rabbit to find its way down here, get comfortable feeding on these tips, and then I'll close off the exit. And maybe I'll get that one. So I'm just going to monitor this for a few days. And it's, you know, it's a nice thing to do after work, just to get out here. It's, boy, there's not a breath of wind today. It would be a great night to be camped out. But it's too late for me to set anything up like that tonight. I haven't really planned for it. Oh, okay. Here's another spot that, you know, really is a natural pen set. And when there was snow down, there was rabbit tracks going through here. So I made a nice pile of birch tips to give the rabbits a reason to come back. I'm amazed that some of these tips are actually opening up because the weather's behaving like it's March today. We you know, it's just the weather's so weird. We had like -19. I just heard something move. Something's over there. Anyway, that's such weird weather. I don't know if this birch tree thinks it's March. Totally weird. Anyway, I cut that all down. I cut some tips off. I don't see any sign of feeding here at all, but I know they go through here. I left this sort of entrance open. When I saw the rabbit tracks, they were going this way from over there. Rather than close that off, I left that open. And then I just went around, all the way around, and examined basically no real natural way out. The way the rabbit tracks went this way, so I closed that off and put a snare. So there's still a way out, and the snare is exactly where the rabbit tracks were, so where the rabbit would naturally exit. And then I put one over here, just because that looked like an exit to me as well. It was sort of open. And when I looked in there, there was sort of like a tunnel going in. So that looked like a... Also, there's a huge fallen birch tree here, right? It's been down for a number of years, but it's got cover. It's kind of thick in there. My guess is that when that tree came down, all those tips were around. They sort of got used to the area. So I'm guessing that this is sort of a rabbity spot. Anyway, whatever came through here hasn't been back at all. It's been a couple days, but that doesn't mean anything. It could be back the next day. Doesn't really, you just never know with these things. Anyway, this is the third pen set, and I've got a fourth one. I just laid a bait pile down in a spot. This is after the tractor. I should have made a number of these piles when the snow was down, and it was obvious where they like to go in this section of the forest. This is a completely different section of the forest where there seem to be some rabbits around. But no, they're not thick. That's for sure. That's for darn sure. Definitely having to fight my way into having a few rabbits this year. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. That's it for today. People have been asking me if I make a sort of a catch, kill, cook kind of video. I'm planning to do one. It just has to be the right day. I don't normally film cooking videos when my family's in the house. I find it takes over the whole upstairs floor of the house and just sort of imposes on them, and I don't like doing that. I like doing it on, if I have a day off or for whatever reason everyone's out of the house. Sometimes I'll make them when my two kids are out and my wife goes for a walk. Then I know I've got like a good hour to film a cooking video. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. It's neither here nor there. The point is that I do plan to do one, but just everything has to fall on the right day. What I'd really like to do is a video where I show how I cook the liver of the rabbit, because you look on YouTube, there's lots of videos on how to cook rabbit. Some of them are good, some of them are atrocious, but I haven't seen anything on how to cook rabbit liver, and it's delicious liver. And you get, 3 or 4 rabbits. I mean, one rabbit liver. I like to cook the liver and the heart and the kidneys all together, and that's like an appetizer for one person. It's a little snack. It's not really a meal. You'd need a number of rabbit livers, hearts, and kidneys to make a meal. But it's a part of the rabbit that normally gets thrown away, and they're all good, and it's just a question of preparing them properly. Very enjoyable. But anyway, that's another video. Hopefully I can make one. Hopefully I get enough this year to make that happen. I got one at home that I've dressed up, but I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to cook it on video. I might have to wait till the next one. But anyway, that's it for today. I'll be out checking the snares tomorrow, seeing what's going on then. If the weather's okay, it's supposed to rain tomorrow, but we'll see how it goes. We'll try to get something up for the weekend on the YouTube channel. Okay, see you next time.